What's the point? I mean, really, what's the point? Let me tell you a story, my friends, and in this story, a man is faced with overwhelming odds. Much like many of us today, he felt that the opposition had complete control over everything: communications, entertainment, news, politics, health. He felt that his people were being abused by a tyrannical and powerful adversary. But then God encourages this man in this story. And there's a quote from the story. The quote is, "One man shall put 1,000 to flight, and two shall put 10,000 to flight." This story is in a book in the Bible called Deuteronomy, and it's in chapter 32, verse 30. And it's a story of a man named Moses who was trying to work with a group of people who felt that they were outnumbered, outgunned, outfunded, but they miraculously somehow were able to defeat this tyrannical adversary, which is something many of us need right now in our nation. But what many of us do not know is that this story has conditions, this promise of victory. It's only available under specific criteria. And my friends, as we look around us at the discouraging setbacks we continue to see, I offer you, for your critical consideration, I just offer you for you to consider that in fact we are violating those criteria, and this violation that we are allowing is responsible for our escalating chaos and accelerating losses. But before I go there, there's another story, one more recent. For the past 24 months in Florida, we have been putting out an appeal. And more recently, we have been putting this appeal out every week. We're sending this appeal out to 8,000 people. What's the appeal, you may ask? To attend a free Zoom call where volunteers, just like you and I, ordinary people, unpack winning strategies to restore our nation, to rescue our republic. Of those 8,000 people, about 125 show up. And of those 125, about 30 take consistent action. But those 30 people are working with specific protocols in specific ways of interacting with each other and with the government. And those 30 people have led the effort to pass one of the most comprehensive election security laws in recent Florida history in 2022. And they are now responsible for getting four bills to further enhance election security. 30 people out of 8,000 that are invited, 30 action takers in a state of 22 million people. How is it that 30 people are able to achieve this? And more importantly, what would happen if we can grow the 30 to 90? What would happen if you can take the work that you're doing in your state and add some of these protocols to the way you're doing what you're doing? And that is what I'm here to talk to you about. So buckle up, because you are going to get confronted and made uncomfortable. But if you can lock in on your need to win, either for your sake or for the sake of your children, maybe you can stomach what I'm about to throw at you. Are we good? Shall we proceed? All right. Two things are part of our required protocol for success that we are doing in Florida. And it's not what you think. First, a little background about me. I'm coming from your future, meaning I left 3 countries to come to America. I left Ethiopia, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. And in each of these nations, the leaders there had already done what the leaders in Washington, D.C. are doing right now. And in each of those countries, things have gone very badly for the people there, especially the people that are most vulnerable. Education, shot. Health, economy, national pride, welfare, security, law enforcement, all in disarray. And that's the path our American Republic is on right now. What will it then take to rescue our republic? For that, I direct your attention to the work of a man who was arguably the most successful in taking a small ragtag team of regular folks and transforming them into world changers, a force for good. Who was that? His name was Jesus, and his strategy called for us to be more than bystanders. We're actually called to be active participants, but there's more. Participants in a specific way. Remember how Jesus harnessed the power of different. What I mean by that is he literally intentionally chose the most different group of people to be on his team as disciples. He intentionally chose people that had conflicting personalities, education, aspirations, and fears. He chose Peter, a fiery, fiercely independent, redneck businessman. He chose Matthew, a despised tax collector. You may call him Jewish in name only. He called Luke, a medical doctor, John, a thoughtful, sensitive man, almost like a poet. But he still urged this group of different, conflicting personalities to unite under a single mission. And that's our model for collaboration today, my friends. It's not trying to get sameness. It's not even trying to get people to agree on everything. That group of 30 I mentioned earlier, they have conflicting personalities, competing agendas, yet they have disciplined themselves to choose to collaborate towards a common mission despite that. That's the Christ model. Yet I see a worrying trend in our families, our clubs, our political groups, and even in our churches. There is this infighting. Sometimes it's overt, sometimes it's subtle, it's passive aggressive, and this infighting is hindering our ability to act as salt of the earth, as light of the world, which is what we're literally called to be. There are tens of millions of us that want good for our country. How come it seems that with that large number, we feel helpless? We feel like pawns. These internal squabbles is a cancer that is impeding our momentum. Of course, there will be those who will justify their self-righteous indignation at their peers. They will look down on their nose and say, oh, well, I'm a rugged individual. I believe in rugged individualism, and that person, well, they're a rhino, she's a plant, she's internal opposition, they're not MAGA enough, they're too MAGA, or whatever. Be careful. While your intentions may be good, your actions are cannibalizing us. And consider, you don't have the slightest clue about the necessity of operating as a single, highly choreographed, highly synchronized professional unit in order to defeat our adversary. So, that was heavy. I got it. You maybe agree, may don't agree. I understand. I appreciate you considering the words I'm putting in front of you. So let's change topics. Let's talk about the Chicago Bulls. Okay, that's what I call a topic change, my friend. Consider the Chicago Bulls transformation. They were formed in 1966 and they struggled. Then they hired a man named Michael Jordan in 1984, and that began the turnaround for the Chicago Bulls. But that's not the whole story. Fast forward to the mid-1990s. On the one hand, you have Michael Jordan, paragon of discipline, finesse, focus, and then enters Dennis Rodman, the antithesis of Jordan's personality. He was flamboyant, he was unpredictable, he was controversial, and their alliance was improbable. It was as improbable as bringing together a fisherman, a tax collector, a medical doctor, and a poet. Jordan and Rodman were not just different, they almost hated each other. They refused to talk to each other. They were poles apart. Jordan, with his polished image, dedication, contrasted starkly with Rodman's wild hair, infamous antics. They were literally like oil and water, fire and ice clashing in every conceivable way. But yet, on the basketball court, they disciplined themselves. They decided to choose to find an unexpected symphony of skills, a harmony that propelled the Chicago Bulls to heights previously unimagined. This unlikely partnership led the Bulls to an era of dominance, securing 6 NBA championships in just 8 years. This, my friend, is a testament to the power of disciplined collaboration in spite of and in the presence of conflicting differences. In spite of conflicts and strengths, maintaining focus on the critical mission in spite of our clashing egos and personalities, the type of alliance that was the Jordan-Rodman alliance, that is what is required now in order to achieve our common goal and achieve our mission. So earlier I shared a real-world example of how a few regular volunteers have achieved so much. And I said I would share 2 examples. So here is the final one. Let's address a myth. This myth which actually allows us to excuse our unproductive ways of being with each other. This is a belief that someone else is going to solve these problems for us. Someone else is going to handle these challenges. Perhaps you think that when you get your political candidate in the White House, everything will be solved. Perhaps you think it's the job of your pastor, your political candidate, your supervisor of election, your legislator. Yes, the school board members, the councilman, the city councilman. Yes, it's their problem. They have to solve this. Ask yourself, is it really their sole responsibility? What did it mean by we the people? Does that mean just checking off your candidate's name on a ballot once every 4 years, and in between those 4 years someone else is going to handle all of this for us? Someone's going to provide the leadership, keep the ship on the right, true, right and narrow? Again, going back to the Bible, going back to the words of that phenomenal strategist, that capable leader, Jesus. Consider what he says in another book in the Bible called Matthew. This is in chapter 5, verse 13. Jesus is talking to people very much like you and I, and this is what he says. He says, you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. Notice, he didn't delegate this role to your pastors, to your political figures, to your clerks, to your legislators, to your leaders and officials. He directed this role specifically to each individual, you and I. And that, my friends, is where we land. Let me share with you my view on what being the salt of the earth and the light of the world is not. Okay? This is not a call to sit idly on a pedestal of self-righteousness, pointing fingers at the faults of others, going to your REC meetings, your clubs, your grassroots groups, your church, your social media, complaining about what so-and-so did and what they should have done, because that is not what Jesus did. Jesus was not on Twitter X, my friends. Well, how do you know that, Raj? You weren't there. Jesus' life was a testament to active service, making real, tangible connections in the real world, person to person, empowering those around him. He didn't create movements by just calling out what was wrong. He inspired change through action. Jesus taught with authority. He built communities of faith. He inspired hope. He directed wisdom through wisdom. And most importantly, he acted. He fed the multitudes. He healed the afflicted. He comforted those in despair. His life was a relentless pursuit of doing, not just talking, and certainly not posting on Twitter. And now he's counting on us individually to emulate that example. It's easy to criticize from the sidelines and wait for someone else to step up. But the real challenge, the real call to action is for us to be agents of change ourselves. So I urge you, do not relinquish your power and your responsibility to others. It's not just a task for those in leadership positions. The onus falls on each and every one of us. But it'll require each of us, if we are to accept Jesus' charge to be the salt, to be the light, it'll require us to engage in doing right in an effective way with specific protocols. Let's teach, build, inspire, direct, and act. Let's follow in the footsteps of Christ, not just as admirers of his, but as active participants in continuing his legacy here and now. Remember, the transformation and the rescue of our republic, the transformation of our society, begins with individual action, which means it begins with you and me right here, right now, locally. Our nation's destiny is not tied to one leader, one idea, one event. The real change demands our collective, higher level collaboration consistently and persistently. Petty squabbles, name calling, it might be momentarily satisfying, but they achieve nothing of lasting value. We stand at the crossroads much like the Chicago Bulls did. Will we let our differences divide us, or will we find our strength in those differences? The different skills, the different talents, the different capabilities, those conflicting personalities. That's the stuff with disciplined collaboration that is the building blocks of rescuing our republic. The future of our republic, my friends, literally is dependent on us taking specific action. So I will give you some suggestions for your consideration, some actions to take. Take action like this. Number one, educate your neighbors face-to-face over a cup of coffee, over a barbecue, or on a table, face-to-face, building relationships, not online, because online activity is very impotent. So educate your neighbors about what? About the importance of voting. Number two, share the track record with your neighbors about your legislators and your officials. Number three, train yourself on how your governance operates in your communities. Number four, spread this call of action far and wide. Foster collaboration in your groups without requiring uniformity. Number five, form influential teams to engage with key decision makers, meaning get on your team a business owner, a faith leader, an educator, a data professional, a salesperson, a teacher, a parent, people with good standing in your community. And then as a collaborative team, meet with your leaders repeatedly to the point that they know and respect who you are in your community. That is primary. Them agreeing with you, supporting you, that's secondary, and that'll only come after you've repeatedly done the preceding four steps. Well, how do you do that? One, get plugged into an effective, vibrant, professional action-taking group in your area. Also, consider attending our weekly free strategy calls. What's covered on these calls? Why should you attend? Well, this is what's covered. How to build a team, how to maintain a team, how to increase your influence and your power in your local community, how to approach your officials, how to deal with continually being rebuffed by officials, how to leverage your peers in your community to rescue our republic. That is what your peers are covering each week on these calls. In conclusion, the rescue of our republic lies not in one leader, in one event, but in each of us taking responsibility, teaching, and leading in our communities. Let us commit to this path and be the change you wish to see. My name is Raj Doraisamy. I am simply an immigrant here who's answering the call to be the salt of the world and the light of the world in a dark time. And there's a community of others that are also answering this type of call, all in their own ways, from diverse backgrounds, religions, education, and skill sets. But make no mistake, we are operating as a professional, highly trained, highly informed, choreographed, collaborative unit, and we are pushing back. Join us. Together, we can build a future that we can all be proud of.